Hello, greetings, and wow, we're doing Inspired Ink. It's an occasion now, I feel. It's Inspired Ink, we're pumping out episodes left and right, just, twice a week and then went to once a week. And now we kind of are savoring it for these really special occasions. And we like doing these live videos for you guys, for our community, because it's just been so engaging with Spilled Ink. So I'm so happy to kind of bring back the interview show. It's been a minute since I've interviewed someone, I guess. I'm pretty much Matt Sardo, IC3. It's been almost a month to the T that I've talked to someone on the air, but I'm really hyped and excited because this guest today, I'm just going to pick his brain because there's so many questions I have. There's so many questions you guys have. And to even start, we have Sam Kusek, the head of comics of Kickstarter. Hello, Sam. I love your tattoos. I love the shirt. I'm so hyped you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. We've had some nice conversations prior to this, and yeah, excited to get questions from the group. But it's always great just to talk comics on Kickstarter and comics in general. I feel like I'm always talking about comics in my life, in and out, which is great. I'm very fortunate to be in the position that I'm in.
It's interesting because we're both of us. We have jobs in the industry,
Right.
involved with comics. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a weird balance of being like we have a strong passion for the art and the craft and everything that involves comics, and we're like in this weird bubble of not necessarily making comics directly and producing them in our positions here, but we're so heavily involved in what comics do and making them function and thrive and live. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your role at Kickstarter and what the head of comics essentially does on your kind of day-to-day and overall what your understanding is?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So my job at Kickstarter, I'm a member of the outreach team, and as many people know, or some people may not know watching this show, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform for a variety of categories, right? So we have design and tech, we have games, we have comics. So comics is one of the one central categories on the site, and we have an outreach team that is comprised of subject matter experts that, like myself, kind of walk in the worlds of those very specific categories so we can talk more to how comics might perform or specific tactics, ins and outs that would do well on Kickstarter. So I was brought on because of my experience working with major comics publishers, doing some crowdfunding myself, and working just in a variety of capacities in the comics industry to be able to speak to kind of the nuances, the ins and outs of how crowdfunding for comics could work. So my job is like I like to say, and this is kind of a pull from my previous life as a project manager, like 90% of my job is communication, right? I come in, I get through my emails, I schedule meetings with folks to talk about projects that are coming up so I can give advice. I have meetings, ongoing meetings with, larger partners who are on the site to talk about projects that they're forecasting or just give advice on how those things are going, and then talk to companies and larger entities about either partnerships or other opportunities that Kickstarter could get folded into or be a part of. I also attend a lot of comics conventions. A lot of that is, again, just interfacing, talking with people. But I'm kind of this. I always like to think about my jobs in kind of like an RPG sense of like, what's my role? What are my skills? Right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a cleric or like a Sherpa a little bit, right? Where you like come, there's a big mountain that's Kickstarter, and there's treasure there that you can find, and it's like, how do I navigate this? And here's this weird guy who's like, I can help you out, right? So I have skills, and part of my skill is helping people navigate the site, but also finding opportunities and making recommendations for things that I think could do really well on Kickstarter.
Oh, nice. And that's so much to like absorb and kind of conceptualize and think about because you're constantly interacting with creators. You're constantly seeing all these dozens and dozens and dozens like of campaigns. And I'm sure it's hard to like even keep up and actually, also find your time to find your passion in comics. Do you ever feel like you lose your sense of being just lost in the industry and seeing so much sometimes?
Sometimes I think it's interesting, right? Because so I've been a comics reader for as long as I can remember, and like my taste has really kind of evolved and changed over time. Where I grew up reading a lot of manga. Some of my early comics were like some of those '90s Viz releases with Ranma and Half and Urusei Yatsura. But I also got really into like Impulse, the Mark Waid one
Oh, cool.
run, because
Yeah.
I was of the
Yeah.
age where you see a little kid running around who's a superhero, you're like, oh shit, that's me, or like Power
Yeah.
Pack, that kind of stuff. Uh, It's interesting. I was talking to my partner about this last night because I'm a creator myself. I make tabletop role playing games on the side, but I haven't had a ton of time for that because of work and some of my family demands. I have two kids under two, so it's just a crazy time in my life. But I am trying to take my time to myself now, less to make stuff and more to intake stuff. So I am
Mm.
trying to read more. I'm trying to watch TV shows that I've been like, oh, I know I would be interested in that, and just like absorb and kind of intake to see where I go next or what my vision becomes next. I like the comment, the Casper the Friendly Ghost comment. Yeah, some nice Dell book throws there. But yeah, it's tough. It sometimes you do just like, I never want to get burnt out on comics because I love comics so much. So sometimes
Mhm.
you do need a break. But I'm never far enough away from the medium because it, I live, eat, and breathe this stuff. Like I wake up, comics are there in my house. Our whole library family room is just like wall to wall books. My kids read comics, or my kids have some comic books, and so it's like it's just there. It's a part of our lives, and I think that has really helped me maintain a love for it because it just feels like it's a part of my life rather than like something I have to do. You know what I mean? I'm sure you feel the
Yeah.
same way, right?
I honestly, I have never related to someone's statement more than in my entire like any interview I've done, because that's the way it feels sometimes, is that you get just so caught up in the day job, and I'm so excited to work and see projects and creators, and I'm helping produce so many books and ensuring that they have success like on Kickstarter and they launch their campaigns well. And then I get to my stuff and I'm like, I am tired. I just want to hang out with my girlfriend and watch. We were blasting through Batman the Animated Series because she hasn't seen it
Mm,
before. So we're just
wow.
binging it
Yeah.
hardcore. Yeah. So it's a fun time. And you just kind of like, I'm trying to get to the projects, but it's like what you're saying. I'm just so involved in comics right now. It's finding that balance. And I know it's just a phase, just like you. It's a temporary period where you're looking at things and seeing how they're going. And there's so much to relate to with comics and tabletop RPGs too. Where does that path cross for you? Did that kind of like blend into your, how you were brought up, into finding a love into that?
So for me, tabletop role playing games came as a result of my moving out to Portland, Oregon. So I'm in Portland,
Mm.
Oregon. I was in Los Angeles before. I worked for Boom Studios. I've worked there twice, but the first time uh, I was a very active participant in the launch of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comics, and I've been a Power Rangers fan for as long as they've lived. I'm gonna pull some vinyl figures down from my vinyl figure area
Always
on
up
my
for that.
shelf,
Nice.
just to sort of show some stuff. I've got a Jetman here. I've got the full
That's so sweet.
set. I've also got a Sun Vulcan here. That's more Super Sentai than Power Rangers, but you get it.
Yeah.
So when I worked at Boom Studios, I got very involved in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers launch. I helped facilitate the 17 retailer variants that went out with number one. And I started just like watching the show more because at that point, all of the stuff was on Netflix, had a long history. I was like, cool, this is great. Like, I have time to kill. I can finally sort of delve back into this. And when I moved out to Portland, I was looking for stuff to do, and I was very much in this Power Rangers space. And I started playing role playing games with some people just to like meet new people and to try out the hobby because I had never tried it out before. And I took that love of Power Rangers and was like, how can I tell stories in this space? Because Power Rangers is great, but in sometimes it's like limited storytelling,
Yeah.
especially in like the MMPR Tommy Oliver focus. Sorry, people who are big Tommy Oliver fans. But the thing that keeps me in that interested in that space is just like the depth and the history of the types of stories that you can tell, right? And I just got really into that world and made a game that is essentially a like make your own Super Sentai or make your own Power Rangers game. And where that crossed over for me with comics is I had access to all of these comics artists, this like Rolodex of people who I thought were really talented and really interesting. And as I developed content, I would reach out to them to do art because a lot of the gist of my game was Henshin operates where it's setting agnostic, so you can create a team and create your own world, and everyone can have their own unique adventure. And within that guise, I wanted to make sure that all of the art in the book was representative of like a different universe or a unique idea. And so it allowed me the flexibility of being like, hey, I want to reach out to this person or reach out to this person. It made sense for me to just continue to sort of pick and choose comics people. And if you look at a lot of my other games, my company is called Cave of Monsters Games. All of my stuff, all my art comes from comics, with the exception of one game, which borrows art from an existing document, but it's technically kind of a comic, so I still count it.
Still plans, yeah, still counts.
But yeah, it's a really interesting world because there are, I mean, I don't know if anybody caught like the Tiny Onion news that went out. Sorry to date this interview, but they're going to be doing a card game, a tabletop card game for Exquisite Corpses. I think there's a lot of opportunity, I would say untapped opportunity right now, especially in the major publisher space, to take some of those IP. I think, Scott Pilgrim is probably the king example here of like, we're going to take this and sort of squeeze it for all the juice that's in the IP and make role-playing games, video games. But I think there's a lot of really interesting independent IP out there that is just ripe for even doing a module or a supplement to go with an existing system, right? And to allow people to tell stories in those spaces, like, not to harp on James Tynion again, but like Something is Killing the Children, I think could be a really great role-playing game. I know Radiant Black, Kyle Higgins stuff, the Massiveverse has some card games, has made some card games. And consequently, there's also, card games and role-playing games that I think could also have really great comics. I just think there's a lot of synergy in that world that people haven't fully figured out yet,
Dude, I mean, that makes so much sense because when you think back to like even like the 80s, there was the Watchmen RPG, and that was out for a good while. And that's one of those things that comic creators can also like kind of consider and think of when they're world building or thinking of marketing materials or, Kickstarter assets in general. And it's one of those things where it's like it makes sense. Like that's a good promotional material, I mean, you could blend those two worlds together so well and kind of like have a short RPG kind of handbook and have your comic next to it. And it's letting people really immerse themselves into your comic book universe. And so that's cool. I mean, so creating your own company and like making your own tabletop games. Did you crowdfund any of these? Was Kickstarter on your path? Why Kickstarter at that point to fund these and go through?
So when we launched Henshin, and I'll get the books just to sort of show people what I've made. When we launched Henshin, we did a Pay What You Want PDF that was on Gumroad, and we did a short run of zines, which we had at Power Morphicon, which is the like predominant Power Rangers convention. And we had a lot of success in that pay what you want model, right? We got like 2,500 people who came in and bought it. Some bought it, most people downloaded it for free, but that allowed me to build a really strong mailing list. And we progressively, through just interest, released more content. But with crowdfunding, we really saw the opportunity to, and we framed it this way. And I try and inform some projects with this mentality of, help us make the best version of this that we can make, right? Where we had made a base game, it had sort of the base layer of what you can do, but there were a lot of other bells and whistles that we wanted to do that frankly we just needed either audience participation on, or we needed just more funding for it. And to see the high level engagement that we got, where, the funny thing about Henshin is that it's a game that is almost completely devoid of combat mechanics. It is completely social. It is just about like, I'm a person, I make mistakes. My mistakes allow me to transform and do cool shit. And that kind of cycle repeats itself, right? So it's more about your character growing and changing as opposed to you rolling dice and like doing the most intense action that you can do. That's not everybody's flavor when it comes to a Power Rangers game. A lot of people want kind of that crunchier mentality, but to see a huge response to kind of a weirder take on this genre was really encouraging, to be like, oh, the community's there. And I think if we put out, we want to make this thing that you already like better, then Kickstarter just seemed like the best opportunity to do that, because there was a lot of flexibility, or there still is. I mean, to be frank about it, we'll get into that, but there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what you can do. And we use the platform to be able to take that zine and turn it into a 200-page book. We added modules, we added more playbooks. We opened up the floor to allow people to create monsters, which were then submitted into the book. Somebody wrote a module. So we added these like levels of participation as well, where I'm sure you experience this too, and I'm sure some of the creators who are listening in or watching experience this too. Like there is a subset of like fan who wants to be a creator but doesn't necessarily know how to do it, or maybe has the means to be able to do it themselves, right? And Kickstarter is a great way to give those people opportunities that then maybe a stepping stone for them to go on and do something else, right? Like it's very meaningful, I think, to be able to have a book in your possession that you can point to a credit in and be like, hey, I helped write this. Like that's a great sort of path forward to other things. Are you necessarily going to like own a piece of that content? Maybe not, but like, I do think the one of the things that differentiates Kickstarter from say a backer kit or an Indiegogo is that high level of community participation that's already kind of naturally on the site, right?
Mhm.
And I think finding ways to lean into that can make campaigns really powerful. Or I know they can because I've had some firsthand experience doing that.
That's awesome. I mean, and that's so much. It's kind of just strategizing and kind of reflecting a lot when you're doing campaigning. You know what I mean? It's really thinking forward and thinking what would benefit, like yourself in the moment, like if you're in that position of a buyer, but also trying to be like, how is this going to benefit what I'm creating and grow it as well? So there's so many things that you have to move around like a chess piece when you're kind of crafting things, even in a marketing stance. And I think that's where crowdfunding through Kickstarter has made things so much easier and accessible. And so let's kind of dive into that big topic. Like, why is Kickstarter the preferred platform for indie comics versus, we have Zoop, we have Indiegogo, we have these other platforms that are, I would say, competition, but Kickstarter seems to be like the king of them all. And so what draws you to do what you do and really highlight indie comics, especially on Kickstarter?
So, I think I'm coming at a point where like we're coming up on 16 years of Kickstarter being around, right? And so there are some people, yeah, it's kind of wild to think about. Um, so I benefit, I benefit from there being a strong community of people who have been doing this for a long time and who have some expertise that I can learn from and I can help communicate or point other creators to. Part of my job is I reach out to somebody on Instagram who does more kind of like funny comic strip stuff, right? And they're interested in bringing something to the platform, but they don't know where to start. And I'm able then to sort of send a list of here are some people that I know and trust and who I think can advocate for a project very well or help you run it, and put them in touch with that or those folks. And I think that the community is the big part, and that's kind of interesting because it's like it is something that was really naturally created through people just like putting things out there and having success and that growing over time. And I don't want to, it sounds like I don't want it to be a non-answer in the sense of like there are things that Kickstarter does really well in terms of the high level of flexibility that we have in terms of the rewards that you can create, some of the changes that we're making to how we highlight rewards, like featured rewards or secret rewards.
Really like
Um,
those too. Those are great new the featured reward especially, that's one of the best new initiatives I feel because it really highlights like the one you're proudest of that you have the most effort poured into and you kind of always need that king reward to really entice people, especially newcomers where like this is where you're going to get your prime package for this, crowdfunding. Also, it's going to be the one that's probably going to benefit the creator the most to make it come to life, I feel too.
yeah, and to be able to like, I think Kickstarter, we, I think the thing that differentiates us from a backer kit or Zoop or an Indiegogo, I'll talk about Zoop in a second, is like I'm here. We have a subject matter expert who is able to help you navigate the ins and outs of the comic space. But in my job, I think it is very important for me to never be prescriptive with what you should do, right? Like, I'm never going to take a look at your campaign and be like, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that in terms of like what you want to offer. Obviously, we have some rules on the site and things that you have to adhere to, and those are on our rules and guidelines page. But for the most part, like I am not. I want people to like build the things that feel like they're true to the stories that they want to tell and the work that they want to tell. And that's my like ethos coming into all of this. And I just think like the history that we have really sets us apart in terms of like, I hate to say it because I've used BackerKit before and like there's aspects of their service that I like, but like they just don't have the community and I don't think they have the understanding of it. I think Indiegogo has maybe been a little fraught with like some challenging voices in the space and there being just some like controversy there. But again, like not as much, there's not as much community engagement on the site and that lack of subject matter expertise. Zoop is kind of a different animal as I understand it, where it is a
Mhm.
little bit more of a white glove service, where if you are an artist, maybe you've worked primarily on like DC and Marvel stuff and you want to put out an art book, they are going to handle most of the like production design and fulfillment for you. And I understand that that is a really attractive package for somebody who's like, I just want to draw, like I just want to show up, I want to draw, that's all I want to do. I get that. Like I totally get that. But the creative freedom and flexibility that Kickstarter has in terms of like, do you want to make a business? Do you want to not rely on Diamond or a publisher to tell you what to do or how to make your books? Do you just want to like try something, learn from it, make adjustments for the next one, and continue to sort of like grow your business and your empire? I think that's what Kickstarter offers because like I can tell you firsthand, I ran a campaign, I expanded Henshin. I ran a campaign for these are two different covers of the same book, but I learned so much just from the analytics of this campaign, looking at like which cover sold over which, what kind of add-ons sold. It's really helping me drive like what kind of games am I gonna make next because I learned so much just from looking at like what kind of data I got just from running a campaign. It informs so much of like what you can build and develop. Um, it's an amazing experience. It's hard. Can I swear? Am I able to swear on this? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, we'll let
It's
this in.
fucking hard.
It
Like
is.
crowdfunding's hard.
It's
Um,
it's it's so difficult. It's so much stress on one person or even a team of people. It's you're just really rooting for someone to believe in your project enough to just get out there and make it create it and actually physically and tangibly hold it. And all of us are so especially creators like bashful when it comes to our art and creation where nothing we do is ever good enough. And I had experienced that like crazy. I just finished my first cover I did for one of our books for Apollo, and I've been so terrified the entire process. And I started showing it to friends today when I finished it. And I was just getting great feedback. But like inside, I was like, man, they're going to tell me to fix this. And none of that happens. But like
yeah.
then doing that on an amplified level of showing the world this. And, especially when you speak about the Kickstarter community, there really is a community there. It's just understanding how to manage that community, just like you understand how to manage a community on, say, Instagram or Facebook, because you can interact with everybody that's on Kickstarter. You could, speak to these super backers. You could actually do messaging and you could actually promote your stuff in a really intense way on the platform. But I think it takes that effort and that time and that energy to do so and not just commit yourself to Instagram. Is that kind of what you guys are trying to build internally? Is not necessarily a social media platform, but a platform where the community is embedded through your backing system.
Yeah, definitely through our backing system of being able to, continue to engage with and interact with super backers. We have done some pointed research and just like highlighting of those super backers through our site. I think it is, the community part is interesting because there is a lot of outreach that you can do, but you also have to be like, it's good to remind people that like a community is not there for you to just sort of throw something out and be like, hey, help me out. Like you have to actively participate and engage with it, right? Um, where I always encourage people, I think something that's been really great to see. Uh, One thing that I think is really great to see from like mainstream publishers like a Boom or Skybound or an Oni is oftentimes they'll give shout outs to more independent campaigns as well, right? I know there's
Mhm.
some criticisms about having major players like that on the site, where the main criticism was like, why do they need to crowdfund? They may already have the money for this. It's going to be coming out in the direct market. But it is an opportunity for them to show up in a way where comics are happening around them, maybe comics that don't exactly fit their publishing model, but they can give back, they can participate in the community in
Mm.
addition to benefiting from it. And I encourage everybody to do that, right? I know a lot of people already give a lot of shout outs to their friends, or really just highlight in their newsletters like, hey, this is what I'm reading, this is what I'm interested in. But I do think that's a really great active way of just everybody kind of sharing their respective audiences and highlights. Yeah, so we are looking for ways to just continue to engage, have people engage more directly with those backers, but also engage with each other, because I think everybody learns and all ships rise, so to speak, if we're all doing well on the platform.
And I love that too, because it is kind of hard to navigate as an indie creator, and seeing, like, a GI Joe make like 5 million or something insane, you know what I mean? And you feel like so overshadowed when I think some of that angst also comes from like internally being an indie creator, where you go to a convention and you're shoved in a corner for Artist Alley, and then you're kind of under the shadow behind these big creators. And I think some of those feelings kind of emerged with Kickstarter. I mean, and I backed the Coheed and Cambria like campaign, and that did killer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things where it's like, I'm gonna do it for stuff I love, but it's one of those things where also like you're trying to find ways to like not put the shadow over our small projects and whatnot. And I think you guys are figuring out a good algorithm and whatnot, because I feel like a year ago, I launched, 3 campaigns at the beginning of 2024 in general, and it seemed like the results were lower, but we were seeing these bigger publishers pop up. But now, a year later, I feel like the algorithm is kind of getting better on picking up smaller projects and kind of carrying them through to like highlight next to these big campaigns. It is cool to see, an Apollo City Comics book next to a Boom Studios project on, a shout out, or, during the comics page in general. Which also comes into another big question where, also just for the audience to be aware, a lot of these questions popping up, we are saving them towards the end. I'm kind of building them up so I don't get too many repeated and re-answer the same questions over and over. So we are keeping track of all of them. But speaking of which, projects we love. I feel like some people think it's a mystery. I know there's some articles there on Kickstarter, where you could get some insight on finding projects we love. And I thought it was so interesting because Apollo's been real fortunate. We've almost nailed it every single time from our first Kickstarter. Pretty much every Kickstarter we've done is projects we love. And I people ask me this all the time. How do you get it? How do you get it? How do you get it? And I'm just like, I have no idea. I'm just so hyped that I got it. And it was really cool for you to reach out when we got projects we love. And that's how we became acquainted, because of the horror show anthology. But what's kind of like, what do you guys look for? What's the criteria? What's kind of the secret that can help creators kind of go on that route, especially if it's one of their first Kickstarters they're putting out?
Yeah, totally. No, it's a great question, and definitely one of those things. Like, I want to help. Not everything can be a projects we love, but here are some things that I look for. And we have a curatorial team that affords the projects we love tag. I am also able to afford that myself, so I can give musings on like what I'm able to, what I look for, right? Because there are just things that I think help like set certain projects apart. One of the big things is clarity of information, frankly.
Hmm.
There are one of the main pieces of advice that I give to creators of all shapes and sizes is like, tell me what products I'm going to get on the tier that I get, and then clarify, regardless of what it is, how it is going to be shipped to me. Are you charging me shipping at point of pledge? Are you charging me afterwards? Do I get charged if I'm in a different region? Where is it coming from? Is it going to be through a third party service? I think that's one of those things that, like, as far as I know, and based on my experience, is one of the more common pitfalls of headaches and confusion and frustration. When you ship shit out, people can't find their tracking information, or they're pissed that it's much more expensive than the actual book was. Obviously, there's only so much that you can control there, but having information upfront creates kind of a CYA, right, on your page, where, hey, I was upfront and clear as I could have been about the shipping information. And it just helps give your backers a sense of their total financial commitment, which is like the most fair thing I think you can do for them, right? Of just be like, this is what I'm asking you to spend your money on, and I'm trying to be as clear as I can about like what I'm expecting from you, right? Because you don't want people to feel like they're getting the rug pulled out from under their feet or they're getting gypped, right? They're not likely to come back in that sense as a repeat customer. So clarity of information there, particularly around shipping, is important. Um, from a taste perspective, I personally look for more innovative stuff, if that makes sense, or something that is really, we have a lot of like superhero content on the site, which is great. We do have some not safe for work content on the site, which is great. And there are spaces for those and lanes for those. But sometimes it's easy, I think, to just kind of get buried in the sense of like things feel very the same, right? Where we will have more innovative or mold breakers, I guess is the best way to say it. And it's hard to define that, but sometimes I just PWL'd a campaign that was like an 80s thriller comic about like a pharmaceutical coup d'etat within a company about like an experimental drug. And I was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't like the experimental drug turns people into zombies, right? And goes the horror route. It's much more of kind of this like political workplace thriller. And I was like, oh, that's different. Like, um, I think there's just, innovation and using the platform to bring out really wild ideas, I think is something that I personally look for. So if you have any wild ideas or if you're thinking about like, will this work on Kickstarter? Like, feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to give you sort of my thought and my take on those because I think I'm all about bringing really wilder, interesting ideas. Um, and then, yeah, the last thing, and this kind of goes with like clarity of information, is just like showing. This is the other tricky thing, especially with comics, is comics is a real like show don't tell medium, right? Or I've had to tell some people on their campaign pages, I'm like, you're telling me way too much about the story, or you're
Mhm.
showing me way too many preview pages, right?
Yeah.
My sweet spot for preview pages is like 4 to 5, I think could be good. It really depends on like what the flow of the page is and sort of the story and the the landing point you want to get people at. But if you
Mhm.
have like 12 pages of the story and you're funding a single issue or something like that, it's like, oh, that's half the book, dog.
Yeah.
And you're really like you're expecting people to spend a ton of time on your page kind of reading through it, or you really want to just like appetize them and get them to pledge for the rest of the story. Um, so I think having just like a good amount of information to show where I'm really enticed and I feel like I could get a sense of what the story could be, but I'm curious enough that I will take the chance to see what it will actually be. So yeah,
Yeah.
3 to 4 preview pages is generally what I look for a PWL.
I love that. That makes sense because even and I'm trying to check mark everything Apollo's been doing on our Kickstarters to be like, okay, we are doing that. You are totally right. We're doing that. And it's one of those things like we always use Wham stands, these little stands I put my
Mm,
comic on. And so Wham stands a great company that helps you display your comics on anything from events, pictures, whatever. But we always specify we go through this company. So there's our third party thing. We always talk about kind of our publications, like we've been around for X amount of time doing this. We're now proud to present this new book. We give a little synopsis, and then we show not necessarily we've cut down on preview pages, and now we've kind of made preview panels. And so we're
mm,
giving you more of a snippet, just but you're like only getting part of the page because we want you to kind of like scroll through and not get caught on page after page after page. We want you to feel excited, especially for an anthology. I feel like that does things right because it gets people kind of just very curious on that. But that all totally just really give the right information. Don't spoil your book too much. Be very clear. And what about like, are there kickbacks for like, not delivering on time and stuff like that? How do you guys kind of work around those type of aspects? Because I know there's even projects where no project's guaranteed, and that's part of the thing on Kickstarter. That's a very big warning. It's a very big risk. All of us are doing this, but are there like kickbacks like where you can't create new projects or things like that? I've never encountered that, so I was just kind of random
Sure.
curious.
No, totally fair question. So everyone who starts, when you start running a Kickstarter, that's your first campaign. And what we require before you move on to your next one is you show some level of fulfillment on the first campaign, right? And I say some level of fulfillment because comics is uniquely suited, unlike design and tech or games, where you can send a PDF of the book. And that will start your fulfillment process because technically, like, you are providing the comic that was given or that people pledge towards if you offer, a digital reward tier to everybody. I would encourage people to do that. Sometimes people are less likely to do it. I don't fully understand why, but it's like
It's free money,
scale
dude.
and scale
Digital
that
rewards
digital tier
rule.
up. Well, and also
Yeah.
like if you're able to release it a couple of weeks ahead of the book coming out and releasing, you have gotten your book into the hands of those people who want to read it. And it's just nice. It's a great milestone for you to be like, cool, it's done, it's out, it feels good. So we track fulfillment to that aspect, and we really do look at fulfillment and customer sentiment. I think is another thing that we track of like, what are the comments saying on a page? Are people happy? Are people excited? Are people having issues with a particular kind of piece of fulfillment or just like communication from the backer? We don't care as much about the content of the book. If somebody
Mhm.
does have an issue with the content, they can reach out to us and we can facilitate a conversation with the creator. But it really is about like, how's fulfillment going? Are people getting the things that they were promised or that they paid for? And are we meeting the expected time frame? And if not, what is the communication about the delay like? Right? Delays
Mhm.
happen. That's just a fact of making things, right? I've said
Yeah,
in interviews, and I'll say in this one, that like anytime you prepare for a Kickstarter, plan for something to go wrong because something's going to go wrong.
for sure, for
Um,
sure.
but
Every
if
time,
you,
dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But I'm sure you've experienced this too, where like if you actively communicate about it and tell people that, hey, I'm delayed because of these issues, people are more likely to, yeah.
100%. Dude, every time and I've witnessed this from just, doing what I do at CWS, being a creator myself, and we've been late on books. We've, just things got messed up with the creator we were working with or a cover artist or, printing or something shifted financially. Like there's all these things that can happen, but literally as long as you communicate to your audience, people are going to understand, are going to be okay. I promise like nobody is going to be hashing you out and destroying you because you're like, hey guys, I had this big thing happen and I just want to express life happens, dude. Like my this is like, probably a sad story, but like my dog passed away last year and it
Oh
took me
man.
like 2 months to ship out Hyperforce because it was just like in my living room. I'd work on it for like a few hours and then I'd be like, all right, well, I don't want to do this anymore. And then it would just sit there and sit there until I finally got it out. But it was like, things like that happen, but just communicate, like if you let your people know, they'll back you up. And that's what's cool about it too, is that everyone knows that being a creator is difficult. It's hard. And we're trying to get us stuff down there and we're trying to be professional because if you're a comic creator, you're running your own little independent business no matter what. And so you're trying to be a professional business person. But hey, even in those times, look at all these, McFarlane's been late on toys, like all these brands have been late on stuff. There's delays. DC, Marvel has delays. It just happens. But I love your insight on that, where you're just trying to bring awareness that things are actually okay. We'll work with you. And you gave so much good advice on finding a way to hit projects we love. Do you have any other advice for someone launching their first Kickstarter? Just a mindset to go in. And for the record, right before you answer that, CWS, or check out our newsletter because we're giving advice on how to run a Kickstarter campaign all of through April, all of through May. All of our newsletters are wrapped up around that. And we'll have blogs coming about how to have successful Kickstarters for you guys to reflect back on. But Sam, what are a couple tips for just have a good, successful Kickstarter campaign in general?
Uh, yeah. So my tip, especially for first time creators, is like, don't. What's the best way to say this? I always like to say like, be specific about what you want to make, right? And be maybe start on a smaller end where you come in not saying, hey, I want to make this whole series. I've seen people come in with campaigns that frankly haven't gone anywhere because they're like, I want to make a book that is also going to get funded into a television show, and like just sort of they see this whole long trail of like, here's what my awesome story is going to be, rather than starting, realistically at that first issue, right? Like you want to be specific about, here's the thing that I'm trying to make, give people a very clear view and indication of like what it is, when they're going to get it, and like the ways that they can participate in it. That is my sort of like general largest piece of advice. Similarly, really interrogate as much of the budgeting as you can. Printing costs are going sort of up and down all over the place. Figuring out whether or not you can like print locally, or if it makes sense to print overseas. Does it make sense for you to ship things out of your house or use a distributor? Like, have a good sense of like what your budget is, and like I said before, sort of what your total financial commitment is. It's not going to be just like writing and art. It is printing, it is fulfilling, it is, making up for any mistakes that you have. Maybe it is making pins as a stretch goal, and sort of like, what does that look like? I think just getting as much information as you can and having that on deck, so when costs actually hit, you can measure against, is this as expensive as I thought it was going to be, or is this maybe hopefully cheaper, and you're able to, maybe make your products a little nicer, or keep a little bit of money for future projects or something like that. Like we were able to do that on the Henshin campaign, where we went for $5,000 to make the book, and we ended up making $25,000. And we decided, we were like, cool, we're just going to use some of that money to like fund 2 other games. So we make 2 other games out of it, right? And it just became like, the company is a lot healthier now, so we can do cooler shit.
Yeah,
And
I mean
that was,
that's the smart way, definitely.
it's
I
a
mean,
it's a
Ap-
great feeling.
Apollo City Comics is trying to do a smut book so we could fund the next 3 campaigns we do. You know what I mean? Just to
Yeah,
know that.
yeah. No,
Um,
totally. Yeah, finding ways to figure out how you can use your success to sort of further that content is really great.
And there was a question that popped up that you answered all of this to the beat, but someone was asking, is there such a thing as a goal that's too low? And I mean, really just everything Sam just said, really encapsulating that. But also one of the biggest tips I gave in the CWS newsletters was, understand how find a reasonable goal for yourself, like understand your community and your following, and also base your goal off of that. Like, don't set yourself up for failure and ask for $2,000 and then you not have a big social media presence, you not have a newsletter that's out, you didn't do a pre-launch page and promote that heavily. If you're doing all those, if you don't have any of those things, don't ask for that much. Try 500. 500 is probably like a safe bet. Maybe 250 if you want to go really, really small, depending how small your circle is. But I promise, if your rewards and tiers are set up well enough, you will hit $500 probably no matter what. Just by some small posting and just reaching out there and talking to friends and family and just your outreach on social media in general. Apollo always gives 1,000 to 15. I feel like we're leveling up now because we're now doing 1,500 instead of $1,000 goals, but it's something we know we can do. Like, I know I'm going to hit that amount. I'm guaranteed. I would be, blown away if we didn't hit $1,000 on a campaign, but it's like, I know I'm going to hit that. And that I know it's going to cover printing. That's going to cover for the books that were backed, and I'm going to have a couple extras for cons and probably some goodies. There's no real big profit in that. We never really take account in for, but be realistic with your goals. And I think
Yeah.
then you'll find your way to success. And you know what, while we go into this, why don't we answer a couple questions that have popped up throughout the chat? And one of them that I really thought was really cool, Max Flowers had popped up over here. And to add to question we were speaking about earlier, why use Kickstarter over a creator-owned pre-sale system? Kickstarter always seems to rally your community on such a greater level. So why would people launch their own websites? Apollo has a website. We do pre-sales. So what's the benefit between going through Kickstarter versus say your own website, where there's no Kickstarter fees and whatnot, and people think about that and those aspects? What's the angle there?
I mean, so, depending on the system that you're using, like it's to give the Kickstarter answer, depending on the system that you're using, our analytics and tools are probably going to be a little bit more robust than what a Squarespace or like another system like that could offer. I'm not as familiar with like some of the creator-owned systems, so there could be some that I'm missing, but we have during the campaign run advanced analytics where you can see to the dollar amount where your traffic is coming from, so you could really like isolate and pinpoint and repeat some successes there. You're able to see how many of your pre-launch followers converted over from pre-launch to actually pledging. You can track communications. You can automatically or message people who have backed at certain levels if you have any clarifying questions or want to make changes. So there's a lot you can do from a campaign management perspective through the Kickstarter system that I think makes the day-to-day of crowdfunding very easy. Um, Moving forward, looking ahead, we are also going to be rolling out a pledge manager through the Kickstarter system. So in early May, that'll be available to the general public in an open beta fashion, right? So anybody who's using the system will be able to, like some of you have done through BackerKit, be able to charge shipping, be able to charge VATs, other taxes. So we are really trying to create this holistic approach of crowdfunding where you are coming to Kickstarter to create, run, and then fulfill a campaign. So we're trying to do all of it for you. I think creator-owned sites, there probably is a high level of control in terms of your analytics and things there, but I would say we're a really proven system, and there's a lot that you can just like gain that's already there. And we are a company that is in the service of creating things to make things easier for backers or for creators, sorry, and for backers, frankly. But I just think you have a team of innovators who are going to help you solve problems and help you find the information that you need to find, so you don't feel like you're doing it all on your own. Where in a creator-owned space, it may be tougher, I think, to move forward or to resolve some of those larger issues because you might just not have a point person to be able to talk to at a company.
That's very true. I mean, there's a lot of those aspects that, kind of just the benefits of messaging and looking at those analytics and seeing what social media platform should you really put effort into as well, where you're getting that traffic sent to your Kickstarter campaign. And here's another
We
one. Oh, go for it.
just one final thing on that, like the promotional aspect. We do a heavy amount of promotion for our projects that are on our site. We have 2 newsletters that go out to audience of 1 million people every week. I have a comic specific newsletter that goes out monthly. We do some social media outreach. So doing it through Kickstarter, we kind of naturally pick up stuff and throw it out to our larger community. So that's another one of the benefits as well.
And CWS now has a Kickstarter focused email that goes out once to twice a month. We're bumping it up to twice a month now, where it's going to show
Nice.
all the active campaigns and the upcoming campaigns for you guys to support. Especially, you know what? I guess I could make this announcement right now. CWS is dropping their very first Kickstarter. We're launching it May 1st. It's going to be this book called Panels, and maybe I could actually pull it up right here on the Kickstarter page. You guys could check it out. Panels, the comic book creators guidebook. And this is a story driven, just literally step by step, hold your hand to ensure that you are making the best comic possible. And this ranges from anywhere from, I guess, younger audiences to adults. And the pre-launch page is up now. We're going to launch from May 1st to May 31st. But this project is literally, you're going to end up having a comic book at the end of this, where you're going to, not like, you see How to Draw Things the Marvel way, and it goes from cylinder to a little bit of touching up and then Daredevil, and you're kind of lost. This takes away all of that, and we give you every step you need to make a great comic. We're going to be showing a lot more stuff over the next couple of weeks to promote this, but we're hitting it hard in May with our very first Kickstarter, and I'm so hyped about that, and that we'll be doing that with you guys. So really exciting. But I forgot where I was segueing way into that, but we're going to segue back into this by someone was speaking about the survey system. And I did notice recently the survey system has updated. Can you tell us about some of the updates with the surveys?
So with the surveys, we are treating your items and your rewards as like individualized SKUs, right? So there is more flexibility in you to be able to ask a lot more clarifying questions about, like, in my case, I was able to offer 2 different covers, right? And the survey, you can ask, what cover do you want? You can get more of that pointed information that normally you would have maybe had to do through the messaging system or building out another survey through BackerKit. So it really is just a lot about like building out more robust information. So if you're working with higher level backers who maybe bought a lot, or maybe you're trying to make apparel or sort of widen your scope in terms of what you're able to offer, you can get more information from them. I also think it's a great way to be able to collect marketing information. You can hear from people about what enticed them to that particular reward, maybe where they heard from you. Really just have more of that like pointed communication and dialogue with your backers through using the survey system.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's like kind of heavy when you have a lot of tiers and add-ons and whatnot. Is it something that's kind of getting involved at this point to make it, I guess, smoother for larger tiered items, or are we just kind of like rolling out the system and seeing the performance and feedback of it all for right now?
I think we're more in that rolling out the system and getting some performance and feedback. I, you know, I was a project manager in the website development and design space for 10 years prior to coming onto Kickstarter. And so there is a heavy, and Kickstarter is like, though I'm talking to you primarily about comics on Kickstarter, we are a technology company, kind of at the end of the day, right? And a lot of our core competency is around, we're going to put things out for you to use, and you let us know what's working and what isn't working. For instance, one of our product managers was talking to Tyler James of Comix Launch about some upcoming functionality, and he gave very specific feedback around, hey, here's how I use add-ons in previous campaigns, or here's things that I asked my creators for. That's a really great way for us to just be able to have the dialogue about, there's only so much guesswork we can do to figure out what is going to work, but the more that we put out, have you guys respond to it, give us feedback, the better that we can make it for you. And that's really, I think, the period that Kickstarter is in right now, just rapid release and open communication.
Yeah, maybe CBWS can team up and send like a survey out to get you guys some info. We'll talk off air
Yeah,
with that. Yeah, we'll get
yeah,
that one. But and there's a big concern I've seen across the board. It's happened to me. It's happened to everybody. But like when you lose a pledge, and I can understand how the pledging system works. And you correct me if I'm wrong by all means, but we don't take money from backers right away. And that's because things can change. People can move. There's a month difference, or within that time frame, anything can happen. So you're waiting for the project to be fulfilled if it's meeting its goal to pull that money from creators. Because even if you took like $5 from a pledge, then there's a bunch of reversals if it doesn't meet its funding. And so you're trying to guarantee that people are going to meet their funding. And that's why you collect information after the entire campaign is over with. But then you end up with a lot of drop backers sometimes. What's the mindset, or I guess if there's some clarification on why, or further clarification on why, pledges aren't taken right away during the backing, or, if what Kickstarter does to help, monitor drop backers, especially repeat offenders for drop backings and whatnot.
Yeah, so there's any campaign that ends, there's a 2-week period after a campaign ends where we do our due diligence to work with the people, the backers who have backed a project, to collect their pledges using the credit card information that they provided at pledge. For those of you who haven't, I can't imagine anyone on here hasn't backed a Kickstarter project, but you input that information at pledge and you save it. We hold onto that credit card information, and if it doesn't go through, we give them opportunities to be able to, resolve those issues. And if they don't, we will send you a report of those drop pledges, and you can work with us to figure out who these people are, and we'll be able to, make the effort for you to be able to contact them and help resolve those issues. I think in some ways, it's challenging because there are some instances where people drop for very good reasons. Maybe they just don't have the funds due to financial hardship, or I've had instances when I was working at Boom where somebody passed away and their family then had to resolve and get their money back. But we do our due diligence within that 2-week period where we work directly with those people, because ultimately, somebody is pledging the ethos of Kickstarter is we're not a storefront, we're not a pre-order mechanism. We are a system that allows somebody to create something that did not previously exist, right? And you are asking for people's money to do that, but there's that very human side to it where you have made that transaction, but like you noted and like I noted, things can change, right? There's the reality of things changing, and we have to take that time to just be like very conscious and human about how we interact with people, because who knows, I've had people who've had to drop pledges that have then hit me up through like an itch.io store and say like, hey, I had to drop my pledge, but now I have money, I'd love to come back and get this, or is there any way I can get this PDF and work with you through outside channels? So there's still opportunity and benefit to putting projects out there and interacting with those people and building that community. So you really don't know what's going to happen.
I've had that same thing happen. I think on my first campaign for the punk anthology, I had someone reach out like 6 8 months later, and they were like, "Dude, I'm sorry, my payment didn't go through. They weren't even able to get to their computer during that period." And they're like, "Do you have a web store I could purchase this comic from? Because I know I didn't pull through on my pledge." And I mailed them a copy and whatnot. We worked things out. We took care of all that. But there are a lot of instances, and that makes sense. You know what I mean? Life can totally happen. But also, I think that comes down to like making the right funding goal so that if you can take into account a couple hits, and that's kind of hard sometimes. Like for the horror anthology, we had someone back, and it was like almost a $500 pledge, and so you were just
Wow.
like terrified. They were a super backer. We were like, I hope this dude pulls through. I hope this dude pulls through, and they did pull through. But like you're just terrified for like especially when it's on week one, and you're like, we got 3 weeks, man. Anything can happen. Like let's just hope this pulls through. But it's that trust in your community, and I guess communication and showing your passion for the project. I think that happens as well. And I think it just I guess it varies from campaign to campaign, but I think what you're saying is work with Kickstarter, like reach out to you guys, open a dialogue, and see how you guys can help in a lot of these situations, because you don't want that happening to creators in general.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the core messages is that like my role specifically at the company is to like help and grow the creator base in comics, right? And to make
Mhm.
sure you guys are happy and healthy. So there are absolutely going to be things that I probably can't do just through the nature of like work and legal liabilities and things like that. But it never hurts to ask and for us to have a conversation about like what your needs are, because there could be an alternative method, or there could be something that I am able to like help point you to, or a resource I can help point you to. But it is really about, again, going back to what's the key differentiator between us and BackerKit or Indiegogo or Zoop. Like you have I have a very public persona now in the comic space. People reach out to me all the time. I will see people on the street or at conventions who know me, who I may not know them, or now I know them. But it is helpful for me to understand what the needs of the community are, because I can't do anything if I don't know what the needs are.
I love that, and it's hard to keep up with. And especially, I understand that because working at Comix Wellspring, we try to do everything for our creators, and we get a lot of feedback in, but you have to filter that in, mix it in with your workday, find solutions, operate with your team, change things around. Like there's a line that happens, and it gets complicated. So totally understandable there, especially on that. I guess working in the industry sense. And final, like kind of, I guess, odd question. It came up in the chat here, and it's a big controversy against indie creators, but there's a
Mm,
lot of like AI generation right now. And there's, AI creations, AI
mm,
comics, AI funding. And it's hard to distinguish what the right move is especially when you're a crowdfunding company trying to bring projects to life. And we're in this weird flux of understanding what's good and what's bad and what's right and wrong about AI. But does Kickstarter have any thoughts, or are doing anything about AI projects? Or what's just I guess not stance, but what are you guys able to do, can't do in that general situation?
yeah, yeah. It's an interesting conversation, right? I can share Kickstarter beliefs, and I can share my beliefs on it. So Kickstarter, we do have a policy that if a certain amount of AI work is disclosed, there are things that are going to be acceptable, right? And we do ask people to say like, how is AI being used? We have a section for that that is closer to the risks and section at the bottom of each comics or each campaign page. And it's really, I think about like being responsible and upfront with people about how the technology is being used, because I have part of my job is I will go through every comics project to take a look at what is being produced. That is where I allot a large number of my PWLs, and it is also a way for me to just kind of monitor like the safety and the health of the platform, because I do think there are some people who some creators who come in who are trying to sell AI products as comics, and they're not very forthcoming about how that is being used, right? And those are the comics that we generally shut down,
Mhm.
or the projects that we shut down. Of if you're trying to pass this off as something that it's not, then that's just not acceptable, because you're not being truthful to backers, and who knows where that is a slippery slope of who knows where that starts and ends, right? Um, uh, and yeah, I think it's all about just like being responsible. I'm still very much of the mind that like I haven't really seen uh, I was just chatting with a friend about this because they are being made to use AI in their work. And so they're like, oh, maybe there's a responsible way to use it. How would it work in comics? And I've yet to see, I think, a good example of how somebody has taken maybe a comic script and turned it into a comic or an AI comic in a responsible way, um, uh, in real life and on the platform. If anyone has examples, please let me know. I'd be curious to see how that has formatted or formulated. But I do think right now, the way I see it is I feel like the people who are generating comics using AI are maybe doing it as a way to sort of skip the line to having a cool product without fully embracing the like hard work that comes along with making something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're like, oh, I have this idea. I think it'd be a really great kids show, but they haven't really sat down and like just kind of developed and made it and gone through the trials and tribulations of just like the hard work that comes along with the blood, sweat, and tears of just like making something, you know? And that's not the Kickstarter stance. That's my stance of just like, here's where I think we're at now. Um, so yeah, I'm curious to see how it evolves, but I will say like the offenders, we are, yeah, that would be very tough to do, Gary. The people who are dishonest about how AI is used, we are reaching out to them and having conversations to better get down to the brass tacks. And if it's not acceptable use, it is not allowed on the site. That's just kind of the be all end all of it. But we just want to make sure that like people are have a full understanding of what they're pledging towards. And I will say too that like if something doesn't smell right on the site, then like the other great thing about Kickstarter is like people vote with their dollar, right?
Mhm.
If I trust that the community that is on the site, the community of backers and creators, are looking and going like, well, shit, like this doesn't really look like a genuine project, and they're just money's not coming towards those things. And sometimes those things, going back to a goal, sometimes those things have really ludicrous goals, like $100,000 or $200,000, and you're like, really, like this is your first project and you're asking for that? Like there's just a lot of things that don't make sense, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And I think the community, the 16 years that have been that have built up the community that is on Kickstarter, is a really difficult fortress to try and break through,
Mhm.
because people are very smart. Like
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of dummies. We don't have a lot of like snake oil salesmen or charlatans on Kickstarter. We have a lot of hardworking people who have like built up really genuine, interesting, authentic content, and they're finding the audiences that want that, right? And I just think that's kind of at the end of the day what it's all about, is just like authentic product and communication from authentic people who love comics because they just have always loved comics.
I love that. I mean, and AI is so weird in like the universe of creation and comics and art. And the way I kind of made peace with it in my head was that we opened a submission for an anthology, and somebody I post a lot of anti-AI stuff all over Apollo's page and all this. And someone was like, hey, part of our submission, we use this AI tool to enhance the coloring, and here's the page just so you could reference it and see it. And I see what they're doing with like using it as a tool to enhance their coloring. And in my head, I was like, okay, so you're playing the guitar and you're putting it through a pedal and it's giving
Right.
it an effect. So you're using AI as this pedal, but you're playing it, you're putting in the work, you're just using it as an enhance it, just like you would a phaser or a chorus or a delay, something like that. It's like kind of like when you use Procreate and their tools, when you're using it like that and not letting it do all the work, I think there's a way to balance it, and we're getting to that point. But if you're using it as your guitar and as you, the musician, you're just abusing AI. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
flat.
No, I think that's a great example of there are ways to use it responsibility to enhance work that has already been made, or even just like concepting stuff. You may be able to be like, hey, show me this. Like for one of my games, a friend of mine was like, I wrote a bunch of spells using AI, and I was like, I'm gonna try it out. And like, I was not very happy with the results, frankly, and I didn't do it. I just went and wrote things myself. But like, I do get the idea of using that technology to enhance your product. But if you are just flat out, I think, creating something from scratch using AI, then like that's just not it's just not, I don't know, it's not what comics are, frankly. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not it's not, as a consumer and a lover of comics, it's not the direction I want to see this medium go in.
100%.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Sam, this has been a great and a just wonderful packed hour. And I think one of the biggest things that people want to know was how can they contact you for some of this advice or start some dialogue with you? What's some contact info? I'll even add it to the,
Sure,
the
sure.
description right after as well.
So there's two emails. There's Comix at Kickstarter will go directly to me, or there's s.kusek, that's Kusek, at Kickstarter.com. Often people think that I'm related to John Cusack. I'm not. Would love to meet him one day. But please email me. I will be upfront and say in this interview that like I work through my inbox as things come up, so it may take a couple of days for me to get back, but I do try and get in touch with people to provide information. And if I feel like I want to take the conversation further, or if it warrants a phone call, I will recommend that. But I think email's the best way to go for initial conversations. That really gives me a sense of where you're at, what kind of work that you've done based on the communication you have and the information you provide. And I guess just to that point, if you have a project you want me to review, send me a link. If you have a presence on Kickstarter, send me a link. The more information that you can give me, the more informed I'm going to be in terms of being able to help you out. So help me help you.
I love it. I
I
love
guess
it so
I'll
much.
reverse that. Yeah. Let me help you. But Brandon, thank you so much. This was really great. Awesome conversation. And yeah, I look forward to working a bit more together. And thank you all for your thoughtful comments and conversation and questions. It was really nice being here.
Yeah, we've got great feedback. Thank you to our community for tuning in. And don't forget to check out the CWS Kickstarter that's launching. You'll see it in our newsletters. You'll see it all over panels, the Comic Book Creators Guidebook. Sam, I'll probably be emailing it to you and just to talk to you about it as well. Super hyped about that. And I appreciate the insight. I appreciate the time and everything Kickstarter does. Apollo City Comics has done, I don't know, 10 Kickstarters. It's been such a blur. There's so many, dude. And then we have so many more lined up this year. And I'm so excited because it's brought my projects to life. It's got me to where I am. Everything behind me has been kickstarted and funded, kick out everything. So I'm so excited for our catalog. So thank you for what you've done for my books, for the community books. And I'm so hyped to continue this great relationship with you guys. And at that, thank you all for joining and thanks for hanging, Sam.
Sounds good. Have a good night, everyone.
Comics with Comix Wellspring.